One other thing that is kind of like the flywheel has gone loose and things are totally out of control is there are no limits on corporations. If you'll look at, I'm from science, so I look at natural things. You know, I believe you monkey with Mother Nature and you've just messed up. If you'll look at the ocean, big fish eat little fish up to a point. When fish get really big, they eat plankton, they eat krill, they eat seals, they eat other things, but they do not destroy every species below them. Mm-hmm. In corporate America, one company after another completely obliterates all similar species beneath them so that they become monopolies. And we are basically a monopolistic ruled nation right now. I mean, look at the corporate power. Most people wanted Medicare for everybody. It didn't even make it to the table because it's not in corporate interest.
Right.
The only things that make it to the table, what the people think no longer matters. It's what the corporations and their paid lackeys, our politicians.
Well, they're funding all their campaigns, so
exactly.
So they are able to put them in
their
their
pockets.
pockets.
But they're a little more than paid employees.
Yeah.
Most of them. So I look at it as we have two parties in this country. We have a corporate party, Division D and Division R of the corporate party.
Right, I agree.
And we have the People's Party, which is the Green Party. Yeah. Those are the only two parties there are.
Yeah. Well, I agree with most of that. So
I was going to add one other thing.
Yeah.
The public is, I'm always mystified because the true costs of our consumer goods, let's take gasoline especially, are subsidized in various ways. Or, yes, they're subsidized.
Well, the military is a massive subsidy.
But I'm talking about indirect subsidies, that what happens to the environment is not figured into the cost of a gallon of gasoline or so many other things that are actually destructive.
Externalities.
But externalities, the economist calls them. But the military is the biggest example, as you just said.
Well, we have 725 military bases flung around the world.
Right. Some people say it's a military empire.
Well, it's an
and the latest work said 900.
Yeah, we don't know. There's a lot of secretive bases.
There's a lot of secretive bases, but the point is, it is a large economic and military domination of the world, and I think the world's starting to get a little fed up with it.
They are, yeah, and this is absolutely an issue because China is one of our biggest creditors for our national debt. They hold around $1 trillion of our $12 trillion debt, and they're getting a little upset with this because we're essentially borrowing from them to have massive military spending and military colonialism, and we're encircling them in a sense, encircling most nations in the world, and it's making the world more dangerous for China, and they're starting to think maybe we should stop funding this.
Well, I think the party is almost over on a lot of this. American assets are in danger. All assets, whatever we've invested in U.S. currency, U.S. businesses, is certainly in jeopardy now. And you look at countries like China that hold a lot of our debt. They hold U.S. securities in reserve because they need us. They need our consumption for their economy. But a lot of countries like China, Russia, and Southeast Asian countries are now coming together. They're trying to create a new reserve currency or trade or
so we're going to get to that
treaties.
Later in the program.
And but with oil, especially, we have complete control over that market. And that's why we see our ability to be able to manipulate the price of oil to the point where we get cheap and plentiful oil here in the United States. And our whole economy is based off that. But we'll get to peak oil later.
Right. Next, unless anybody else has one more pressing thought about military spending and that aspect of the debt, I'd like to move on to the bailouts, the Wall Street bailouts. So I guess we could do that. So we know that we saw the $700 billion bailouts that Bush and Obama supported directly to the Treasury, directly to Wall Street banks. But there was also $2.3 trillion in bailouts from the Federal Reserve that was done sort of in secret. And the American people, when the chairman was called before a congressional committee, the chairman was asked who these $2.3 trillion bailouts went to, and $500 billion of them went to foreign entities, foreign institutions in other countries. You could argue a global banking cartel in a sense. They're connected. But so, and when the Federal Reserve Chairman was asked where these bailouts went, he essentially told the Congressional Committee and the American people that they don't need to know. It's none of their business. But in terms of the national debt, I mean, we're looking more at the $700 billion Wall Street bailouts. And I think it was really interesting. I think there's probably only 10 to 25% of our Congress that is really acts in the public interest versus the corporate special interests. And one of our public interest representatives, Marcy Kaptur, she was asked about the Wall Street bailouts in a documentary, and she was asked, would you consider the Wall Street bailouts a financial coup d'etat of the American government? And she thought about it for a second, and then she said, yes, you could consider it a coup d'etat. And she points to the White House behind her, and she says, the people aren't in charge in there. Speaking of herself, a representative of the people aren't in charge. She said Wall Street's in charge. So, I mean, I agree with that. I think that, in a sense, corporations have taken over our government, and the people don't have that much power. I'm sure you have. Well, you can add something.
I just wanted to add one point, which was the fact that there have been no restraints placed on Wall Street. They were given the money carte blanche. They've not had to re-regulate. They've not had to do anything. The bubble is currently being reinflated, and we're getting set up for the next round of stripping average Americans of what wealth they have left and transferring it to the very rich in this country. While the auto builders, who at least build a product that we can use, okay, their unions are being unmercifully broken. And I visit Mexico once a year for friends down there, and I've watched the American plants build up. They're looking for any excuse possible to close the remaining American plants and get down there where they can get 40-cent labor. It's as simple as that.